Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and I bought another Olympia, and it was a really good deal. So I have this flea market that I've been going to for the last few years in New Jersey. It's about 30 minutes from where I live. I go there once a month, and it's kind of a honey hole of typewriters, meaning that they have a lot of typewriters, but they're not always in the best condition. And more recently, I've had a really difficult time negotiating to buy any of them. I have purchased a few from here. I've purchased a Smith Corona Silent from here. My Underwood Star is from here as well. Did I buy anything else? I can't remember. But over the years, I've gone a few times and tried to purchase a few typewriters. And the last maybe 7 or 8 times I've tried to buy a typewriter, and the owner will not negotiate with me, or at least negotiate down close enough to what I'm willing to pay for a typewriter. I have a personal price cap of about $25 on a machine, and I'm actually trying to lower that down to $20 in my personal collection because I have to consider things like putting in a new ribbon, repairs, and buying any new parts. And that's where a lot of the expenses kind of add up when I'm working on one of these machines. So I've recently been trying to lower that price point even further. And when I go to this particular flea market in New Jersey, I always seem to get around the $30 mark, and I can't seem to drop it any further than that. Now, I've held firm on all of my negotiations, and the last 5 or 6 just haven't panned out. We can't seem to meet on a number. This last time I went and offered $20 on this Olympia typewriter, and eventually I got him down to $20 for an Olympia SM4. But here's the kicker. I didn't check the typeface when I was there in the store, and when I got it home, I found out it was a script. For those who do not know, script typeface is cursive. So now I have a 1961 Smith Corona, nope, that's not what it is, a 1961 Olympia SM4 in green that has a script typeface. So I'm very happy with this purchase, but it did lead me down a little bit of a research hole when it comes to Olympias, because I have had some Olympias before, but the biggest difficulty I have when buying a new Olympia is actually determining what type of Olympia it is. When they were working on these Olympia typewriters, they weren't necessarily releasing them to be different models. Instead, they were making changes and alterations to the design of the original base model and just kind of updating it as they went without making them new versions of the model every time. What I found was that an SM2 can look very similar to an SM3 and an SM4, and so when you go into the typewriter database, it can be kind of difficult to distinguish which Olympia you have. So I started to do a little bit of research, and I found some incredibly helpful videos. I'm going to link those all down below. The Mr. and Mrs. Typewriter video that I found was probably the most helpful in determining the difference between these machines. But there's a quick little trick, especially when it comes to identifying an SM4, which is what I have. The first thing you want to look at is actually the logo placement on the machine. Early SM2s had the Olympia badge or logo across the paper tray. As you get into later SM2s, those are going to be on the fronts of the machine on the top ribbon cover. The other things you can look for is actually the keys. So when it comes to setting your tabs on these, this is where you start to get those bigger differences. On an SM2, there are no tabs to set. On an SM3, you're going to manually move those tabs. And on the SM4, you're going to have a set and clear button or a plus and minus button next to your space bar. And that's how you can really determine the difference, especially between the 3s and the 4s. So if you have an Olympia and you're looking at it, trying to figure out which one it is, and it has those 2 little extra buttons next to the space bar, it's an SM4. That to me is the big giveaway. There are a few other features as well, like the SM4 has carriage levers on both the left and the right side, whereas the 2 and 3 only have them on the one. And the SM4 also has pinch margins, which you can pinch and move in, and I do like that feature. Another really interesting thing that I learned is that only on the SM Olympia 4 and only in the green color wave are you going to have a different colored spacebar. So all of your keys are going to be the same color, and for some reason the 4s in the green color have a different colored spacebar than the rest of their keys. It really makes it stand out and look unique, and I'll be honest, I didn't even notice when I first purchased the machine. It's only when I got it home and was watching this video, I had to think about it and then go look at the typewriter to see if it had that different colored spacebar. So those are kind of the main differences between the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. And again, if you want a really helpful guide to see the differences there, please go check out that Mr. and Mrs. Typewriter video that I found. It's linked in the description. Super helpful and very easy guide. Now, the SM typewriters are very popular amongst collectors. Almost every collector I know has an SM typewriter of some kind somewhere in the line, but they're not the most popular in my area as far as finding them in sheds and basements and flea markets. In German, the SM actually translates into medium big typewriter, and I got that from the Joe Van Cleve video on the SM3 and 4, and I'll link that down in the description. And it makes sense to me because these are not the most portable typewriters, but they're also not the largest typewriters. It's kind of, again, like that middle line between something like your, I think it's the SF, is that what it's called? And then something like your desk Olympia SG, your standard size. I don't see these very often, and when I do, they are usually more expensive. Again, they're more of a collector's item, much like some of the other more desirable collectible machines that collectors are wanting. So I never run into these under $100, and when I do, it's pretty hard to pass them up. So I paid only $20 for this one, got it home, found out that it had a script typeface, and then I set to clean it. Now there were a couple issues on the machine. Mostly these were cosmetic flaws that I could easily clean, but the other big thing I found was that the case was starting to peel, the outside vinyl of the case. So I did do a quick little clean on this machine. I had difficulty getting it apart. There are a couple backplate screws in the back of this machine. The frame is designed to have kind of a front U shape on the front and then a backplate that screws into it. That's a pretty normal thing for machines to have on their outer exterior panels. However, the back panel was painted over the screws. That to me was so strange. I've never had that happen before, but I actually reached out to a few other typewriter repair techs. I guess that's very normal on the Olympias to have these backplate screws painted over, and you're actually supposed to remove them. I looked at them and saw they were painted over and decided I wasn't going to mess with it, which meant that I, for some reason, was able to get the whole bottom piece of this frame off in one piece. That can't be right, and it doesn't look right, and it didn't feel right, but that's how I got the bottom frame off. I then went and cleaned this with soap and water and some Simple Green. I did the same to the top cover. One of the things that was missing on mine was actually the badge plate across the front. There was just a little A of Olympia on the front of this machine. I did look into some options for replacing this. I didn't see any specific replacement badges that you could just easily throw back on there. Someone recommended that I could 3D print or make one with resin to go back onto this plate and replace it, but it requires you to have another Olympia typewriter that you can mold the badge off of theirs, and I don't have another one in my collection currently. Well, I have an electric one, but we won't talk about her. So I couldn't do the 3D printing route or the resin route. I did find someone on Instagram who's actually selling logo pins from different makers. This is such a cool idea, and eventually I will purchase one of these. I'll link this down in the description below as well. They do have one for Olympias, but the size of it doesn't look like the original Olympia logo, and it is made of metal. I wasn't necessarily sure how I was going to affix that onto the front of this. So I decided to kind of pass on that for now, and I ended up removing that last little A. I don't know what I'm going to put here instead, some sort of badge plate. This is a machine that I think I would like to keep, so I might want to personalize it a little bit and come up with something that I could put right there on that front little logo plate. So it's cleaned, I've got the logo off of it. I did put a ribbon in it, and I put in a bicolor ribbon because that's what I normally do on most of these machines, only to go and type a few pen pal letters and realize it's a monocolor machine. So I had to go and purchase a single color ribbon and put that in the machine instead so that I wasn't typing in half black and red all the time. It doesn't have bicolor, right? Yeah, there's no switch for that. Unless I'm totally missing it, and that's not entirely impossible. The other big task I ran into on this Olympia typewriter specifically was the case. Now, the Olympia cases are the ones that have the white in the middle, the green on the top, and the green on the bottom. I love the look of these cases. I got it home and started to go through the cleaning process and realized that the outer vinyl on the top and bottom had started to shrink and pull away from the edges, so the green parts of the vinyl. I looked at the cracking in this, knew it was flaking, and I thought I could maybe replace it. So I ended up ripping off all of the old vinyl on the bottom of this case, and I took off all the green stuff, and it went down to the bare wood. Now this is a cool look to begin with as well, just the bare wood with the white vinyl in the middle. And I saw an Instagram post a few days after I had ripped this off by Typewriter Revolution who had done this same thing, and it looks really cool to have the bare top and the bare bottom. and I might go back to that at some point, but I wanted to try to recover the bottom to protect that wood over time if you're moving the case around, sliding it out from under things, something that just would protect that casing. So I got a little arts and craftsy, and I'm not exactly pleased with the results. I did buy a spray adhesive that works with wood and fabric, and then I went out and also found a material that I thought would look good with the other aesthetics of the case. This is a brown vinyl that I found at Walmart. It was like $9 for a yard. I brought it home and measured out a square that was a little bigger than the bottom of the case, and I spray adhesed it to the bottom part first. Didn't have a plan for the sides. I was just kind of going by the seat of my pants. Now it looks really good on the bottom of this case. It fits really well. It's very smooth. The spray adhesive did a great job. I put some weight in the middle of it and let it sit overnight so that it would adhere properly. I also did this again in a ventilated area with no animals around. That's my big tip. Anytime you're using spray anything, make sure that you are following the safety precautions. So the bottom worked really well. And then I went to do the sides, and I spray adhesed the sides and wrapped the vinyl over them and then put them in place with some clips. Now I didn't think about the fact that the vinyl was squishy and that it would have pressure on it over a period of several hours. And when I removed the clips, I actually got the imprint of the tread of the clips and the clamps in the vinyl. It's not going away. There's just clamp marks all over the sides of the bottom of this case. The other difficulty I ran into was trying to figure out how to wrap the edges of the top of this. I didn't want there to be any extra material at the very top of the case lid because I didn't want it to impede the actual case topper locking in place by adding any extra height. So I made the admittedly stupid decision to take an X-Acto knife around the edge and just cut off the top. It's not straight, it's not consistent. I had trouble gluing in around the back clasps of this case, and I ran into a lot of trouble with the corners. I am no seamstress. I don't know how to do this. I cut a slit into the corner and tried to wrap them over each other. It doesn't look right. So this is kind of the final result of wrapping the bottom of the case. If you set it up on its side, it looks great. I love the bottom of it, but the sides of this are just a little messy. And it doesn't look perfect, but for right now it is kind of protecting the bottom of the case, which was my original goal. So we might revisit that later. And after all the repairs, the most important part of getting a new typewriter is doing a type test, especially when it has a really cool typeface. So here's a little footage of that. I've had several Olympias in my collection before, and I usually resell them. One, because I know they're more valuable. I have a tendency to hold on to the hopeless cases in my collection, the ones that I just don't think anybody else is going to want, and I tend to resell the ones that are either more valuable or in better condition. I've always been that way with my collection. I don't necessarily know why. So when I have a good one, I usually sell it. I have had an SM9, which is the very 70s white design, really cool design where the whole top flips up. I did give that in a trade for my Royal Safari that also types in script. So I have a video where I took that on a train with me to Chicago and traded it with another collector. I also had an SM7 that I found on Facebook Marketplace in a beautiful blue color, and I actually resold that to another collector as well. My biggest issue with it was the pitch of the keyboard. So the pitch is the height of those rows of keys, and I found that it was really high. There was something about it that just did not fit my fingers, and I didn't like typing on it. So I've had those two Olympias in my collection, or manual Olympias, and I've rehomed both of those. But I also have had a slew of Olympia electrics with hit and miss results. So I did get an Olympia MR12 electric typewriter. I, for the life of me, cannot remember where this came from. I had to replace the drive belt on this, and it did work pretty well. MR stands for manual return, so it's kind of like that hybrid between the feeling of a manual typewriter and an electric typewriter. I had that for several years. It was a pretty good electric typewriter. I eventually rehomed that. I then picked up an Olympia CE12 for $10 at Goodwill. I replaced the drive belt, thought it worked, and sold it. Got a text Christmas Day that it was broken, took it back and traded out something else, and now I'm stuck with this electric that sometimes works, and then sometimes the shift basket will just drop and not tell you why. I have a whole video on that process. I'll link that down below as well. And at the same time that I had the CE12, I also picked up kind of my dream Olympia electric, the Olympia Report Deluxe, for $5 at a restore. Fantastic typewriter, didn't have to do anything to it, but eventually I had to sell that one as well. So I've had quite a few Olympias. I never seem to keep them. There is something different though about these SM2s, 3s, and 4s. They seem to have a lower rise or pitch to the keyboard, which fits better for my fingers. The keys are a little rough around the edges or sharp around the edges, kind of like the Remingtons that I've had in my collection before, but it's not nearly as sharp as those. The spacing might be a little bit different than a Smith Corona or something I'm more used to, so it's going to take some adjusting to get used to using this machine, but I really like how quick the typing is. The action seems to be really good on this, and I really like the typeface as well. I will say I don't think I've ever bought a typewriter with an interesting typeface knowing that it had an interesting typeface when I bought it. This one was a surprise when I got home. I had a Hermes that had Techno typeface. Didn't know that till I got home and was looking at it after the fact. I didn't know that Underwood had Continental or Stymie until I got those home. I got a double Gothic machine that my mom picked up, didn't even know what typeface it had. So most of the time, the typefaces on these that are special are ones that I get accidentally, but they can inflate the value of one of these machines. People are looking for those specialized typefaces. It can make a machine more valuable. I did do a quick little image and Google search on these online, and it looks like you can get them on online resources for anywhere between like $150 to like $300 or $400. Now that's not accurate because those are online prices, and that doesn't mean that's what they're actually valuable for to a collector. But it is kind of interesting to see a machine like this that does seem to be a little bit more unique because it is the SM4 in the color wave that has the special key difference between space and the rest of the keys, and it has a cool typeface. So not bad for $20 at a flea market. But unfortunately, that flea market owner is not going to watch this video because he knows I have this YouTube channel, and he's gonna know that I got a good deal, and I don't know if I'll be able to buy anything there ever again. So that's how I wound up with my Olympia SM4. I will say this also seemed to kick off a string of really good luck when it comes to thrifting for me. The next weekend, I found a Hermes 3000 for $20 on Facebook Marketplace. And then 2 weeks after that, I found a 1974 Coach bag for $9 at Goodwill. So I hit 3 good things in a row, which is maybe why I'm a little afraid to go back out and find another typewriter, because I know the next troublesome project is on the horizon. So if you have any experiences with Olympias, specifically the SM4, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think of these machines. I seem to like this one so far. So if you're interested in more typewriter content, I do have some other videos on this YouTube channel, as well as on my Instagram at just.my.typewriter. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and remind you, you're just my type writer.